Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tea with TPS, an informal chat with thought leaders in India and abroad. Today, we have a very distinguished guest, Dr. Iqbal, who is by training a neurosurgeon, but his interests exceed medical life. He's a public health activist and educationist, a former vice chancellor of the Kerala University. He was a member of the planning board and you are the chairperson of the committee which designed the University of Health Services in Kerala. He has also been an activist of the Kerala Shastra Sahitya Parishad, and thus he has a multi-dimensional personality: health, education, literature, and also social life in Kerala. From his writings, you see a public intellectual, even though he is a member of the Communist Party. He does not seem to be under any pressure of ideology in his expression of opinions. So we in Kerala value his opinions on all these aspects. And at the moment, he is holding the very important responsibility of chairperson of the COVID expert committee, which gives directions or advice to the government to take various steps in Kerala. So welcome, Dr. Iqbal.
Good morning, sir. I am indeed extremely happy to be with you this morning, and thank you for inviting me to this discussion. In fact, I was watching some of these programs which you have done earlier, and I learned a lot from that. In fact, I closely follow whatever you write, speak. In fact, I am a TPS watcher. Yeah. I am not. I am very frankly telling you. And in fact, I wanted to come to your house and meet you because of these COVID restrictions. I could not do so. Hopefully, we will meet very shortly. But before that, we could do this informal chat. Thank you, sir.
Thank God for technology. Otherwise, we would have all been suffocated.
Yes,
what would we do? So it was a blessing in disguise, in a sense, because we are using technology.
Yeah, the COVID period was a period of learning also.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Winston Churchill, who said you should never waste a crisis. It must be used.
Yes, I think so. Yes.
He didn't say that, but it is attributed to him.
Exactly.
Okay, Doctor, I'll start with your current responsibility and the biggest preoccupation of all of us, COVID-19. Nobody really knows where exactly it is going and how it will end. So we are going through a management process through trial and error method. I think beyond that, new medicines, new vaccines, new technology. One day it may say that whatever we did up to this was wrong. You can never be sure. But maybe you have better ideas. But one is bewildered by the fact that humanity is facing a crisis, the extent of which we do not know. The crisis of climate change, we have some ideas. If we do, say, A, B, C, D, we can get escape from that. If it is nuclear danger, again, we know how far nuclear danger can go and what is the extent of it. But in this particular case, like in the earlier pandemics, there is no certainty about anything. And so, in the circumstances, how do you operate as the chairman of the experts committee?
Because the COVID is a new disease caused by a new virus. It's caused by SARS coronavirus 2. In fact, we confronted 6 coronaviruses earlier. This is the 7th coronavirus affecting human beings. The earlier ones, in fact, common cold is caused by 4 coronaviruses. In fact, there are a large number of viruses causing common cold. But of these 4 are coronaviruses. Many do not realize that.
It's not totally unknown. That's what you mean, right?
Yeah, and then SARS came. SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome in China, 2002-2004, and then MERS, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, in 2012-14 in Saudi Arabia. Both were caused by coronavirus. In fact, this virus is closely related genetically to the SARS coronavirus. That is why it is called SARS coronavirus 2. Though the disease presentation is different. So when you confront a new disease, as the disease evolves, you learn a lot. So based upon our experiences and also correspondingly development of technology and its application, we will have to change appropriate policy decisions. That is what we do in the committee chaired by me. We have 10 experts from various fields, not only from government but also from private sector as well as from research institutes. Not only doctors but researchers also. So they are all youngsters. In fact, I learn a lot from them. From March onwards, March 2022 till yesterday, every night at 9 o'clock we meet. We meet up to 1.5 hours, 2 hours every day and assess the situation. And it is not a closed community. We invite experts from other fields, not only from India, from outside, and discuss with them. Say, for example, recently there was a issue related to Delta Plus virus. So we invited Dr. Vinod Skaria from Institute of Genomics and Integrated Biology to discuss about the new lineage of Delta virus.
Is the one which appeared in UK? Is it the one who appeared in UK?
So, and he informed us that we need not be afraid of that. It does not cause much difference. So therefore, it is not a closed committee. So that way, every other day we may have to change our positions, modify, in fact. That is how science evolves. So it was a great challenge, but I can say now, hopefully, it is coming down all over the world, India and in Kerala. And as I see it, in all possibilities, by early 2021, New Year, we may be able to go to a large extent to the normal activities.
22, you mean? 2022.
I mean, sorry, yes, 22.
Well, but still we have to live with it, right? So
yes,
certain, masks and various things you may still have to follow. And that is how it looks. So life has changed completely in every profession. Maybe diplomacy has been affected most because we are these globetrotters traveling around, meeting people. And now we are all stuck. Look at the General Assembly hall. It's empty. Nobody goes into the General Assembly hall. They're all speaking from outside. So mercifully, the technology helped, but it's not the real thing. But still, whether we can really go back to 2019 situation is still an open question. But I suppose what will happen is some kind of a hybrid situation. Use technology, because education through technology has been in existence for more than 10 or 15 years. All these Khan Academy and Coursera. I tried to introduce it in Kerala in 2011, but nobody accepted it. They didn't think it was so necessary. If only we had done it at that time, we would have been equipped for this. So I often say that it was a blessing in disguise that we are discovering it. And therefore, the possibility of learning more from outside, other universities, etc., that possibility will remain. I think UGC has already said that. But about the vaccine situation, how is it that so many vaccines come? Why is it that it is not coordinated?
Now, before we go to vaccine per se, let me talk about the 2022 situation. There are two issues which we should foresee now itself, because all pandemics at some stage will become endemic diseases. Those viruses which are human beings as natural hosts alone can be eradicated. So smallpox and polio, they are natural hosts. A natural host is human being. That is why we could eradicate them. Smallpox was eradicated in 1980, and we are on the verge of eradicating polio. It exists only in Afghanistan and the Pakistan-Afghanistan border only. We will be able to eradicate it.
It is not transmitted to other animals. That's what you mean. Only human beings.
Only human beings. But whereas in the case of viruses like coronavirus, this has come to us probably from bats, and they can always switch back to their original. They can go to various other intermediate hosts also, and therefore these viruses exist in the environment, and so these diseases will be endemic, and it may recur. So we can control them with vaccines. Say, like for example, the virus H1N1, which caused
Spanish
flu in the First World War, is there in Kerala, but there is a vaccine as well as antiviral. Regarding vaccines, of course, vaccinology is a science by itself now. It has developed to such an extent. So there are various platforms by which we can make vaccines. One platform is inactivated vaccines and live attenuated vaccine. In fact, the Covaxin is an inactivated vaccine, whereas the new technologies have come. Now, the Covishield vaccine uses an entirely different platform. They use a viral vector. And there are mRNA vaccine by Moderna, and there are several such platforms. There need not be any uniformity. These diversities can be accepted. Like medicines, there are different types of antibiotics for different infections, like that. So there need not be, I mean, generally speaking, the general feeling about the scientist at present is that mRNA vaccine may be better than other forms of vaccine. And there is another problem which should be understood, that these vaccines were produced based upon the earlier virus which was present in the community, which can be called the wild virus. Now it has mutated, and several other mutants have come: alpha mutant, beta mutant, and delta mutant, which is more infective, and it has got partial immune escape from the vaccine already we are distributing. And therefore, the companies will have scientists will have to modify the present vaccine, including Delta virus into it. So I think by the end of this year, new vaccines will come, which will include Delta virus also.
Okay. No, what I was.
This should be understood. This should be understood very clearly. Like, for example, flu vaccine. Every year, new flu vaccine comes because the virus get mutated, and therefore new vaccine comes every year.
And many countries it's compulsory to take flu shots. In the US,
every year. I am taking a flu vaccine.
Yes. So I mean, there is compulsory. US, everybody takes flu vaccines.
Exactly. So this can become endemic. You'll have to get vaccination every year. Maybe you have to see how long the immunity lasts, etc. Have to be studied more closely.
No. So in other words, this is the point I was making, not in such detail, but it is not going to be the life of 1990. There will be some danger. There will be some restraint in our lifestyle. All that will remain for a while. That is the point.
In fact, it is said that we are not entering normal. We are going to enter a new normal world.
Everything. In politics and economics, everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
But what are those frontiers of the new normal? We still don't know. That is the point. And
one thing we can say, as you started by saying, we may be applying these technologies more. We may not travel too much. We can do some many more formal meetings can be organized on this platform, online platform. We may use more.
It is
cheaper also, more effective. In fact, yesterday, I mean, I now give a lot of lectures in webinar. A larger number of people are hearing that. Yesterday, I was talking on COVID, from COVID to One Health concept. Somebody asked a question from UAE. Otherwise, this was organized in Chalakudi organization. So earlier, I would go to Chalakudi, address 50 people, and their intents.
Yeah.
And all these are archived also. Yeah. So because your tea time programs are archived, that is why I could go back and listen to when people are talking to you.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's available in YouTube now.
Yes, I heard that. Yes, he's a close friend of mine also.
Okay. So coming to Kerala situation, there is an inexplicable situation here that we were doing very well initial stages. But then we became the worst affected state in the whole country. Now we are, of course, slowly recovering from it. How would you explain this?
In fact, it may appear a little as a contradiction. We did very well in the first stage. That is why the second wave affected Kerala more. Because in other states, the second wave came with the Delta virus. The Delta virus originated in Maharashtra. At that time, it was very well controlled in Kerala. So Delta virus infectivity is very high. Say, for example, the wild virus can infect, say, one person can infect 2 to 3 persons. The Delta can infect 5 to 8 persons.
So the mortality rate was lower, right?
Mortality rate generally is lower, unless it affects the elderly and those with comorbidity. So Delta virus came to other states, and the other states had the second wave earlier. In fact, started earlier than Kerala, 2 months earlier than Kerala. Delta virus came to Kerala late. And then what happened was that the other states, because the infection rate was very high, their immunity status was better because they were affected more. Say the zero surveillance study by the ICMR showed that 62% of the people in other states have got antibodies in their blood. That means they are immunologically protected. Whereas in Kerala, since our control measures were very good, our immune status was low because vaccine was not there at that time. Should remember that. Our immunity was only 40%. Okay. So, and moreover, the density in Kerala is very high. There is a rural-urban continuum. The elderly population above 60 is 16% in Kerala. And the comorbidity is more in Kerala. Diabetes, for example. Kerala is described as the diabetic capital of Kerala. Yeah. And I hope that you are not a diabetic.
Who is not?
Exactly. This should be discussed. In fact, there is a privacy involved in it, but nevertheless, as a joke, I was asking. So, because of all this, and naturally, the second wave affected Kerala more. But nevertheless, if you look at the mortality figures, the national figure, it is only one. It is 1.33. It is still lower than the national global average. It is 2%. Indian is 1.33. Kerala is still 0.6% only. Did
our behavior affect in any way? The elections and the
so many festivals came. So many festivals came. But nevertheless, our control measures are not
ignoring it. They were all being carried on their shoulders and water being thrown on them. It was quite obvious that this was going to be dangerous.
And more important, sir, in Kerala situation, we should understand is that 95% of the patients are managed in the government sector, free of charge. This has not happened in any other state. And remaining 10%, 5% where those who go to private hospitals were covered by Karunya Arogya Suraksha Paddhati project, and they get free treatment. And a few who go to the private hospitals, other private hospitals, there the treatment charges were fixed by the government, regulated by the government. So treatment, we could manage very well.
Even some of the treatment was directly paid by the government to the private hospital.
That is this Karunya Arogya Suraksha. And
the economic impact was not as big as it could have been. Because
the economic and statistics department has come out with a document. I have not read it on the economic impact of this. Because this is not only a medical problem. It is a socio-economic, cultural, educational problem. So it will have a negative impact on all sectors, which we need closer look. That will be the problem we are going to face in 2022, more than the medical problem, I think.
No, but our economy is already showing some recovery on the national level.
National level, yeah.
And direct investment, foreign direct investment has doubled. And even the remittances from our Gulf friends who are remitting, they're also remitting more money. So money is not really gone, but unfortunately the problem is how to reach to the people who deserve it. Or these are all the considerations. So economy is slowly and gradually improving, and better than some of the states in Europe. They have not been able to recover as much as we have. So these are all factors, but these are all very mixed. Maybe one day everything will be revealed, but at the moment, all of us are slightly in the dark about all these possibilities.
Then, sir, we have to look at sector-wise, which all sectors are the marginalized group, how they are affected more, small traders, etc., etc. They may be already in debt. And so sector-wise,
the livelihood issue.
We have to look into it.
I think more everybody was willing to accept sacrifices, but when they found that they could not make a living, then people said it is better to save your livelihood rather than concentrate only on that, and that also had an impact on the society.
And also what happened to the migrant laborers. As far as these Gulf people are concerned, they are emitted more now because they expected to come back, many of them. So whatever money they had invested in other banks, they shifted to India. So that does not mean that the economy is it is something like a distress sale, distress sale mode. Yeah. So we have
most of them have been able to go back. In a panic, they came. But actually, there was no need for them to come. With my experience of Kuwait, when I was in the service, I was in charge of that Kuwait operation from the UN perspective. And we made the mistake of saying, bring everybody back. That was not the solution. And that created a problem between us and some of the Gulf countries. They said, we have a war and you are here to help us. And when the war, you heard every Indian just left. We also, you are only exposed to the same dangers that we have been. And so it took us some time to readjust that because they felt that, everybody, because I remember I was in Delhi participating in the Prime Minister's meetings, etc. The concern was everybody was get the Indians back. We never bothered about the citizens of that country. And that is what was the mistake of our Gulf policy. So because of that, I kept writing that we should not plan to get everybody back. Those who have no salary, those who have no liability, yes, certainly. But if the companies are willing to keep them at a time when they need medical personnel, nurses, etc., we should be more cautious in getting them back. But initially, we are great enthusiastic, we have a duty to bring them back, etc. But now, quietly, most of them are gone back.
But nevertheless, the Gulf issue, apart from COVID, there is a process of localization taking place there.
Right.
So that is going to be a major issue.
But doctor, I think their needs are also increasing. Localization is fine, but they are not able to find the kind of people among them. They are lived in luxury, most of them. They are not willing to do the kind of jobs that our people are willing to do.
Exactly.
And therefore, I don't think many people fear that one day all of them will have to come back. I don't think that will happen. They're already the Indians are more into white collar jobs. Not all of them unskilled anymore. You go to a bank, you go to an industry, you go to a factory, you will find they are qualifying. They are growing from blue collar jobs to white collar jobs, and white collar jobs will increase. Now with their making peace with Israel has opened up tremendous opportunities, and we have now this new Quad, as you know, USA, Israel, India, and UAE, which is a very major initiative. Otherwise, we could not even think of talking to UAE and Israel at the same time. So I'm a little more, what shall we say, positive and optimistic about our Gulf relationship.
I also felt, though, even though I'm not an expert in this field, the Gulf returnee, the impact was grossly exaggerated. I think Dr. Hrudayarajan and others, Hrudayarajan and his colleagues are studying this. Let us hope more studied articles will come.
Yeah, but we are spending unnecessarily on things like Kerala Sabha and all that. I think that instead of that should have been diverted. But I wrote on the first occasion itself that it should be. These meetings are held by Pravasis everywhere. They spend money and hold these conferences. It is not necessary for government to host it. I've been to many conferences hosted by Pravasis themselves. So they're coming here, they also already come. So the kind of investment that the government should make should be in planning their future, giving them opportunities to invest. Those are the things that are more important. Anyway,
I think the more issue is investment opportunity.
Right.
Some directions.
They wasted all their money on building all these mandirams,
Exactly.
Even on a wall, you go to Chettilamangala, where my hometown is. The walls cost more than the house. And who will back that wall? Then finally, when they come back, it's amazing. Nobody advised them. That was the problem. So anyway, health prospects are good, and I'm sure, as you say, by next year, at least from the pandemic stage, we may move to another stage that we may have to, coexist with coronavirus, as they say. But things are optimistic. Okay, coming to education, your other passion. How did you shift to education? Was it when you became vice chancellor, or before that also you were in education activities?
No, I was interested in educational issues also because I was an activist of the KSSP. We were discussing education. But even in KSSP, Parishat, we were discussing mostly school education, not higher education. I joined as vice chancellor with great reluctance. But looking back, I think that it was a good decision because then I could understand more closely, look at the relevance of higher education and especially research institutes in Kerala. So I have come to the conclusion after having gone to the university system, it was a big world open to before me, you see, because see, we are talking about Kerala development crisis and its solutions in Kerala. Mostly these are views are expressed by economists or cultural leaders. See, but now and they come out with their solutions. Good, I mean, in their own way. But I think that if you want to solve the development crisis in Kerala, we will have to reform our higher education and also should become a knowledge producing society. And there we have to link our research institutes with the higher education institutions. Unfortunately, even though Kerala has got the highest density of research institutes, there is hardly any linkage between research institutes. I mean, we have research institutes with the state government, national government, and autonomous agencies in various academic disciplines, starting from history to biotechnology. But there is hardly any linkage between these two. So I think
I don't know if you know it. You have been reading some of my articles. We have proposed that 8 or 9 institutions here, put them all together and make them a research university.
Exactly.
But then the problem was each one of them had, as you just mentioned, different patrons, that is state, this is center, they have their vested interests, and therefore they killed it. In fact, when Mr. Chandrasekhar was planning board vice chairman, so we did a study on this and then made a proposal. We even called it Kerala Research University or something like that. But it didn't take off because most of these institutions had vested interests and they have research fellowships and so on. So they said if you become a university, all this will be lost. And that was their fear. So it is worth. You don't need anything else. Keep the research laboratories there and bring them under a university and give education because most of them are not teaching anybody. They're just doing research and continuing. So opening it up would be a very good process.
I think, sir, Kerala is the best place for knowledge production. Those countries who produce knowledge are ruling the world. That we have to accept that. We may be against USA for political levels, ideological level, but their universities are their universities are knowledge production centers. The RT-PCR technology developed in USA only. The Covishield vaccine is developed in Oxford University. You understand? So therefore, I think we should now look at the higher education and research institute more closely. Otherwise, we say take agriculture for example. See, there is an agriculture crisis. The rice production is coming down. We are depending on Tamil Nadu, even for flowers for our temples. The Padmanabhi Swami temple puja will not will be difficult if there is a strike in Tamil Nadu. That is the situation. So,
because where they used to grow, Puttarikandam is now something else.
Yeah, exactly. But we have an agriculture university. We have actually a research institute for every crop in Kerala. In fact, as far as rice is concerned, there are 4 research institutes. But there is no linkage between the research institutes. Potentials are not being utilized by the state.
Well, M.S. Swaminathan is a magician, isn't it? In agriculture.
He was a magician. He comes from Kuttanad, but look at the Kuttanad situation even now. Kavalam Narayana Padikar from Kuttanad, but he made enormous contribution to culture. Nedumudi Venu made enormous contribution to culture. Swaminathan's vision and dreams could not be implemented.
These are the contradictions of Kerala. So many things.
Now, I want to, sir, in this context, I want to raise a very important point, which many may not like this view, that our academics are to become more vibrant, academically vibrant. They should actually come out with ideas how to take the research institutes and education further. In health, this is happening. Fortunately, from health, if you look at, we have got subject associations for all specialties. See, I am a member of Neurological Society of India. Since I also did my general surgery MS, I am a member of Association of Surgeons of India. There is Physicians of India. All of them come out with policy perspectives, which the government will have to accept at some stage. Take COVID also. The public health experts are very active. You look at the discussions that are taking place, even in the commercial channels. The young doctors are coming out with a lot of views and which influence the governmental policies, whether it is LDF or UDF, whatever it is. Okay.
And but also they intervene when you talk about homeo and allopathy, etc. They have very serious and strong views.
Yeah, but whereas when I came to education, I found that Take universities. The stronger unions are of the ministerial staff, not the academic staff. They are very, their voices are not visible there. See,
Vice
so I
chancellors
think
spend
that
their
the
time
academic community,
transferring peons
yeah.
and accountants.
See, the academic community should become vibrant and assertive. And they should come out. We should see the political leadership may not know all these things. They are not experts. It is our duty to supply them with this information. As far as health is concerned, I can tell you very frankly, sir, whether it is UDF or LDF, whatever new ideas that are generated in the state, we could get them implement that. Say, take for example, the UDF government in 2011. They started government medical colleges. Because before that, we pointed out to the government that the self-financing medical colleges are producing a lot of damage. The academic standards are coming down. So the UDF government started the government medical college. And the reason is because the medical profession came out with this suggestion. So such a movement I don't see in the education sphere. That's very unfortunate.
Well, self-financing institutions did not work the way it was expected. And therefore, there is some kind of resistance. And there is also an ideological resistance, as you know, about private universities and so on, which all should be adapted. Everything should be together. What is so difficult about commercialization and commoditization and all that? These are all slogans. We need to work on patents. We should get Nobel Prize. I keep on saying 100 years we haven't got a Nobel Prize. Every Indian who has got a Nobel Prize work from UK or USA. Why not? What is it that prevents us from, you just mentioned the university's involvement in industry, for example. Startups. I know a professor in Stanford, whose students have produced 80 startups, which he himself participated. So the professor also has become a millionaire. So,
and I think this discussion, the discussion has been initiated by Dr. Thomas Isaac when he presented his budget last time. He talked about knowledge, economy, knowledge, society, etc. And discussion has at least started slowly. I think now those who have views on this should express themselves. We have to change this society into a knowledge society, because you said about the possibility of Gulf. Earlier, unskilled laborers were going there. Now we have to knowledge and skills. We have to constantly upgrade our knowledge and skills. It is become a knowledge. The economy is dependent upon. It is a skill-based.
Well, we have the example of the United States. Most of our people, highest were just doctors and engineers. But now look at all their technological companies. Everybody is a Tamil or a Malayali or certainly an Indian. You have to. Those days they used to change their name. No? If your name is Krishnan, you say Chris. Now it is the other way around. If you are a Venkateshwar or a Srinivasan, you can become a head of a technology company. So that much of reversal has taken place. Same thing will happen in the Gulf too. As we grow and as we develop, various ways to deal with these countries. Because there is basically trust. When I was in the US, that was what impressed me. Indian doctor is trusted more than a white doctor. Can you believe it? Because they know that these people have some different approach and we are more human in spite of all the technology. And that is how these people have come up so well.
I think the new normal period, which we are entering, will be the best time to discuss all these things. Because people have tasted the advantages of these new technologies, the advantage of knowledge production.
So now online education, people will not disagree.
No. There are a large number of MOOC courses.
Online education in a cluster of colleges in Kochi. It worked only for 3 days. Fourth day, somebody pulled the wire, saying that this is they are doing this in order to reduce number of teachers. So an investment which we made, I wouldn't say it out because we lost that money, in linking up 5 colleges and giving one lecture from one college and all the 5 listening. So 2 days only it lasted. Somebody started a rumor, you will all use your jobs. The guy sitting in Trivandrum will give all the lectures. And so somebody just pulled the wire. And the entire money, effort, everything was lost.
No, I attended a... Oh, sorry, sir. Continue.
No. So I'm saying that the mindset has to change. And now it has changed.
I attended a conference meeting in Senate Hall 4 or 5 years back. where there was a resolution against massive open online courses. But now the Kerala University is starting. In fact, they have they have a program called Padashala where they have already posted in the website number of talks on various subjects. In fact, I learned from them. And during this period, I completed 4 MOOC courses from different universities on virology, public health, epidemiology, etc. So these are add-on courses. And of course, now we are moving towards that. I think the new normal period, discussion should not be confined to health alone. We should, we should discuss these ideas.
That will happen. But you must give them credits. You don't need any credits, so you're not looking for a job. But young people, when they do their MOOCs courses, this is what I proposed. MOOCs courses, they should be given credit for it. Otherwise, why should they go and do it? They want to also better theirs. Except for Mahatma Gandhi University, where the present Vice Chancellor is a great man for research. He is the only one who welcomes these MOOCs and organize some courses. I got people from the US, but nobody else touched it.
But then we should, sir, but we should be very careful and close the digital divide gap also.
Right. Because that is happening now.
That we have to do. The students should have the equipment, internet connectivity, etc. That should be, the digital divide should be closed.
Our report was linked to that. We said that this much of computers we have to buy, this much of for each institution, what you should do with it. But it was all not taken up because
I have an idea, sir.
Not considered essential.
Yeah, I have an idea that of course, all the campuses should be made Wi-Fi should be provided in all campuses.
And it's already here now.
In all libraries, we can make it Wi-Fi. And then we can actually, the institutions can loan students loan them the maybe tablet PCs and other things. So some such arrangement, and this digital divide is very important. Otherwise, only the middle class.
If you have to climb a tree to get connectivity, that's not.
Yeah, exactly. That is happening.
What a tragedy! What a tragedy! Talking about the new education policy, don't you see some merits in it?
Now, in fact, there are plus and minus regarding any policy. This has to be discussed, debated, etc. There are because our education requires reform. There's no doubt about that. Already the state government has appointed 3 committees. That is what I learned to reform higher education. One committee is to look at the examination reform, another on the laws, because we are following outdated acts and statutes in the universities. And the third one is looking at the curriculum, syllabus, etc. So they will have to take the national policy also into consideration. But when you do that, some of the apprehensions that were raised by there, it is getting more and more centralized and the federal principles are violated. It is in the concurrent list. India is a very diverse country with diverse language, culture, priorities, etc. That should also be taken into consideration. So I think that the national government should take seriously the apprehensions raised by the state governments, and a fruitful dialogue should be initiated between the national government and the state governments, and a via media approach can be evolved. That is what I feel.
There's no other option. But the thing is that we have a certain mindset, unfortunately, and therefore these get mixed with that. Whether people call it the saffronization. If you teach Sanskrit, everything will, skies will fall. That kind of approach is what is blocking our progress.
But diversity should be accepted. Diversity, and moreover, see, there is a different contradictory approach. And see, there are people who think that excellence and equity are contradictory. There is an equity lobby, there is an excellence lobby. I think that excellence can be achieved while preserving equity. In fact, while I was in London, just before I joined as Vice Chancellor, there was a big debate going on there. I was surprised. I thought I was in Kerala because the debate was that they said that it was that earlier higher education the university education was or belonged to the elite group. So even from India, Jawaharlal Nehru, Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, all studied in the universities in UK. And they said you have to move from elitism to egalitarianism, to universalization of education, to more inclusiveness. You'll have to take the marginalized group into consideration, etc., etc. So therefore, both should go together. We should not say that one can be alone
No,
can
but that
implement.
can be done only if it is not politicized. That is the problem.
Yeah, see, politics in
I
the
remember in my own
in the
time,
general sense.
whenever I created groups for studying citizens, I never looked at the party and put in names. But when the list came, all those names are cut off. We were not even wanting to listen to a person who is supposed to have a different ideology. That is not what we are discussing. And I suppose the same system continues with this government also. Only the so-called supporters, so-called ideologically, people are involved in most of these things. And that is really our problem. If you need not
But I
view
say,
it,
sir, I think in spite of all this over politicization, party politics, etc., since I worked in several institutions,
different governments also.
by accident, I have worked with the UDF. In fact, while I was vice chancellor, 1 year, it was a 4-year, 1 year it was LDF government who appointed me. 3 years it was the UDF government. I had no problem with them also. So I have found that in spite of all the constraints which you said, except that, there is a room for change in Kerala. In what I still believe that there's a window of opportunity, which it is our skill, like us, how to make use of this window of opportunity and to effect change. So I'm very
I'm
optimistic
glad to
about
see
it.
some of the things that they had discarded, what I had recommended. Now they are picking them up, like the accreditation council. It was rejected totally by them. Now I find suddenly the accreditation council has come. Then autonomous colleges, they opposed it tooth and nail. But now they are at least thinking in terms of autonomous colleges or giving autonomy to certain institutions. So we take a long time, like the time when we did not want computers. And now every MLA carrying a laptop. Took so long. A generation was lost in the process.
No, see, good ideas will always come back.
Yeah.
When Karl Marx said that ideas become a social force, so therefore we need not be afraid, because I think I am older than you. So in
That's
your
why I
life,
wrote that book. I wanted whatever I recommended to be there in one place so that you can check whether something is happening or not.
don't feel disappointed. Don't feel disappointed. I think Kerala, I am not disappointed with our political leadership. I can tell you very frankly. What I experience with the LDF and UDF is that if they feel that you are, you do not follow the narrow politics. Politics is very important. I think any meaningful activity is a political activity. That is how I look at it. Will I look at the other aspect, the social aspects of medicine? When I prescribe a drug to a patient, if the patient cannot buy it, I have to look into it, the reasons. So there is a politics involved in all these things. But nevertheless, I think Kerala, both the fronts, UDF or LDF, there is a room for change, and we will have to constantly chip off, and they will be ready to listen. Because social justice, equity, inclusiveness, nobody can deny that, you see. And nobody is against excellence also. So there is no problem. So therefore, I think that I am very optimistic, sir. Maybe I have become very philosophical, maybe because of my age. But usually, as age advances, people become pessimistic.
For example, new education policy. Central government itself is saying will take 30 years. But 30 years is a whole generation. Just to abolish affiliated system. They said 30 years because they think that it will not work immediately. But
now, Bill Gates.
Affiliation system doesn't exist anywhere in the world except in India.
In fact,
and private university. What is wrong with it? Will the private universities come and swallow us? Now the best universities are private universities.
Yeah, Bill Gates had made a very famous statement, because even though we may not agree with him in many issues, his monopolization of IT, etc. Nevertheless, he wrote a book called Road Ahead. And the next year he had to update it. And then he said that don't plan for the next 10 years. By next 10 years, we do not know what the world is going. Plan for the next year, if possible for the next day. That is the rate at which knowledge explosion is taking place. Ideas are changing, world is changing. So therefore, but then we have access to information, unlike earlier period. Literally every information is
in
in our fingertips.
Because he had the money.
Exactly.
He has now gone into nuclear. Can you imagine Bill Gates building a nuclear reactor? Because he's saying that kind of reactors, government agencies are not building. So I'm going to build nuclear reactors. So space, it doesn't mean much, but still, 11 minutes, they spend $1 billion and go up and come back. But this has all signals that this is possible for human beings to do it. And government will have to follow. And that is there are enough examples, enough capability, but somehow we don't seem to gel with all that. And that
We
is
will,
really
sir. We will, I can assure you.
Thank you very much on that happy note. Thank you for spending a little time with me. I know you're a busy person, but I benefited from it, and I'm sure our viewers will also benefit. So thank you very much.
We will meet you at your home very near future. Yeah.
Sure. We'll have real tea, not just virtual.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.